Welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by Mark Carruthers, and we're going to look back on Newcastle United's 3-1 defeat down at their Etihad and their exit from the Carabao Cup. We're also going to talk about David Hopkinson's words on TalkSPORT and look at the club's ambition going forward. As always, we are sponsored by NordVPN. Do click the link in the podcast description box to get a discounted offer on your plan. No risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee and one subscription can be used across 10 devices. So sign up, keep yourself protected, and support the podcast at the same time. Mark, welcome back to the show. Hope you're doing well. What did you make of last night's game?
A complete lack of surprise. Got exactly what I was expecting. I think firstly I'll say the damage was done, 3 weeks ago at St James's Park. I think Ryan Cherky's goal late on killed the tie completely. I never thought Newcastle would go and score 2 goals to force it to extra time or 3 goals to win the game. Bear in mind they'd scored, 1 goal in the last 8 visits ahead of last night, or 9 visits. And that come from a right back, which was crazy. Yeah, look, I think although the tie was all but dead after St James's, it was certainly dead after the first 7 minutes of last night. It just feels heartbreaking is probably overplaying it, but it really disappointing to let the defence of the Carabao Cup go in the manner that they have. I actually didn't think Newcastle played that badly at St James's. There were spells last night when I didn't even think they played that badly last night when there were chances. They created more chances, I think, than they have in an away game for a long time. But they were always up against it. And, it's been a really tough few weeks. And I think last night just adds to that.
Yeah, it's only going to get tougher as well. I had hoped that my little lad would arrive on time so I wouldn't have to reflect on this game and face up to the questions from our viewers and listeners, no doubt you, and I know John Gibson as well, about my blind faith and optimism going into this game. Like, I'm not going to shy away from it. I was optimistic. I was hopeful. I wasn't expecting, and I make no apologies for my words going into this tie, because I always felt that if you went in with a defeatist attitude, if you went in resigned to what would happen, then you may as well not watch it. You may as well not go, both as a player, as a fan, as a manager. Hope and belief is half the battle. I believed, and I know it was unlikely, and I always caveated my belief by saying that, but I'm not sure the players did. I'm not sure the manager really did, if I'm honest. You watch the players coming out before kickoff, and it's easy to assume what they're thinking, what they're feeling, but they didn't look comfortable. They didn't look happy, and I know it's hard to say that, and you don't need to always look happy, so that's maybe the way that they're focused and switched on, but body language didn't say to me that they believed they could get back into this tie. And if you're feeling that, like the majority of fans were before the game kicked off, then it's only going to go one way. And certainly when you concede after 7 minutes, then any hope that I had was gone by that point. But I make no bones about the way I was feeling going into the game.
Can I just say something quickly about the fans? And I'm pleased you've brought it up early. I thought the away fans last night were exceptional. I thought the support they gave to the side was unbelievable. Even, when things were really going downhill, the fact you could only really hear the Newcastle fans and their backing, particularly for Eddie Howe and then Anthony Elanga when he scored in the second half. And look, and I hope this is sour grapes, I promise you, but I hope whatever comes in the next few years at Newcastle, I hope we never get to a stage where reaching a final, getting to Wembley is seen as a foregone conclusion, and we end up with what happened at full time with the Manchester City fans, where and the players to an extent, there was no. I contrast it with Arsenal on Tuesday night. The delight that their players and fans felt at getting to Wembley, compared to what we saw from City last night, I found it a little bit disappointing, I've got to be honest. And look, I like City as a club. I think I love Pep Guardiola. He's one of my favourite managers. He was one of my favourite players when I was growing up. And I've got a lot of admiration for him and City as well as a club. But I just felt last night it was a bit disappointing that the reaction to getting to another final, and I know they've been to loads, I get that, and they've had great success in the Carabao Cup, probably isn't at the top of their list of priorities, but you're still getting a chance to lift silverware. You're still going to Wembley. And I just wonder, I actually texted one of my friends last night at full time and said, can you imagine if Newcastle had been 5-1 up on aggregate in the second leg of a semi-final at St James's Park? That place would have been absolutely jumping. So my plea is, no matter what happens with Newcastle, no matter how many finals we may get to in the next however long, just let's never take it for granted and enjoy every moment.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes when my good mate, who's a Manchester City fan, just didn't even bother texting us to take the mick. I think it was just an expectancy, and maybe the Carabao Cup, as you say, isn't at the top of the list, and it's not something that they really want to maybe focus on. As daft as that sounds, I mean, the top tier wasn't even open. It's embarrassing, really. But yeah, let them be them, and let us focus on Newcastle United. And then a big praise to the 5,500, 6,000 fans who did go down, bearing in mind the scoreline, bearing in mind the unlikeliness of getting through to the final. They still back their team in numbers, and the away following is just really, really special. Always supporting their team. So big plaudits to them. The starting 11, the mark 5 at the back, Ramsdale in net, Nick Voldemort up top. What did you make of the team?
Yeah, I kind of got it. I think it worked to a degree at PSG 7 days earlier. I think Eddie was looking to nullify City's attacking threat through kind of basically just have more bodies in defence. I think, you look at Lewis Hall and Kieran Trippier maybe didn't get forward as much as they would have liked in the first half in particular. So it became almost a back five rather than sort of three with attack-minded wing-backs, as much as Trippier and Hall are attack-minded wing-backs. The problem is, and I always think this, when you do go with that mindset of first and foremost we're going to be defensively solid, when you're playing against City or teams like them, when they've got as many attacking threats that are coming at you from all areas, eventually they're going to create chances. And it just takes one sort of slip of concentration or, miscalculation from a defender, and all of a sudden they're in. And when you've got players like City have, eventually they're going to take those chances. Now, I realise we'll probably go through this bit by bit, but the first goal was kind of a clear sign of that. So Dan Burn has been caught a little bit deeper. He's played players on side. City have broke. It's really unfortunate how the goal's gone in. It's a great tackle from Dan, and the ball's obviously deflected off Mamouche and looped over Ramsdale and gone in. But the initial error is what has led to the goal. And sadly, that's kind of what does happen if you switch off against your Man Cities and your Liverpools of this world.
Well, all three goals, I think, were avoidable. You have to obviously caveat that by saying it is against one of the best sides in world football, and the players that you're trying to defend against are extremely, extremely good. So, you give them an inch, they are going to be able to go a mile. But I just felt all three goals were far too easy for Manchester City. It is unfortunate, that deflection, but the build-up, Mamouche turns Malik Chow with ease. And whoever the Man City number 4 is allowed to be in that pocket space, do the 1-2 with Mamouche. Like, it's not about Dan Burns' unfortunate tackle. It's about what comes before that. The second goal, again, the midfield's totally overran. Sven Botman's trying to press, doesn't work. Similar with the third goal. I think that was, again, the frustration. There wasn't as much space as I tend to complain about, but there was still enough that if you give that to City, they're going to exploit you. The issue I felt, particularly in the first half, was that they were trying to press, but it wasn't executed at all well. Sven Botman was caught out time and time again. And that's the biggest frustration. You can set up to stop Man City, but it's all about how the players execute the plan. And for me, really, after the first 10, kind of 15 minutes, it was clear it wasn't working. Every time Botman stepped out, they just turned and just went. And then the midfield was nowhere to be seen. So I get why he set up that initially. But I think if you look at actually how the players executed the plan, and also the players you've got on the pitch, it wasn't working. Voldemort doesn't press. Gordon hasn't seemingly got that in him anymore every single game. It just didn't work. And for me, he maybe could have made a bit of a tactical tweak a lot earlier than he did. But yeah, it was just a frustrating night. In the first half, Eddie Howe was spoken about it, and he said that they weren't themselves. He wasn't kind of impressed with it. I mean, I'm assuming what you agree with what he said.
Yeah, it's interesting because Eddie tends to defend the players, doesn't he? Or he'll give some sort of defense to how they've played. It's not very often that he does come out and use words like what he did in his post-match press conference, talking about being unimpressed with them. And I kind of got a little bit of frustration from him, possibly a hint of anger as well, that his game plan wasn't carried out. Now, I just think it was brave to go and press City in the way they did, but also a little bit foolish as well, because they are that good a side that if you do go and press them, particularly St James's is maybe a little bit different, but on the home patch, City are that good, they will inevitably find a way through the press. It's not like at St James's where Newcastle kind of feed off the energy of the crowd, and that somehow seems to impact on visiting sides. That didn't really happen last night, and the press, they didn't press at the right times, they didn't press in the right moments, they didn't press in the right way, and City just picked a way through it. And look, again, I will say Newcastle created chances. They did create chances by pressing high, so it did work to an extent, but that was when it was done the right moments and in the right manner and on the right players as well. So, yeah, I think, there maybe is a need for Eddie to look at himself and how he set it up as well, but also the main focus goes on the players because they didn't carry out what they were told in the right way. But yeah, I always wonder, when Eddie has spells like this, when Newcastle have spells like this, how the management team's sort of belief in their own philosophies and their own, the way they're set up and their beliefs and all that sort of stuff. I do wonder how that goes. Do they start wavering a little bit, or will they remain true to what they're doing? You get the feeling it will be the latter, but I do think you're right. There should have been tweaks last night and just a little bit of a word. There was a spell, wasn't there, when Voldemort was pulled over to Eddie Howe, and there was a bit of a sideline chat went on. I wonder what was said then, because I didn't really see anything sort of materialistic coming on the pitch. There was no notable change in setup or system or anything like that. So, yeah, it was frustrating, and I do think maybe it is one of the things we've seen Eddie do less recently, which is making those little subtle tweaks that can make a difference. It's just not happening at the moment.
I mean, I can't complain about the game plan to begin with, because I said 5 at the back. I think that's fine. I didn't want to see a weakened side. I think he played a very strong side, the strongest side he could play. So no complaints there. It's just the players weren't able to execute that plan. And then when you see that, and it happened, the errors are happening so often in the first 15, 20 minutes, I think then the change has to come. He did say, tough first half for us. We were craving that first goal and didn't get it. And when City get it, our task becomes even more difficult. I don't think we played well in that first half. I didn't think we did well in individual duels. And when you do that against the quality of opposition we were up against tonight, it was always going to be tough. I think my biggest concern there, Mark, is that that's not the first time he said something like that. You could take out the game and the result, and it could be applied to one of several games this season. But also individual duels. I mean, this is what Eddie Howe's side has been built upon, going that extra mile, wanting that first ball. And I think far too often this season, not just against City, they're not even winning the second ball. And it's a concern that the foundations of Eddie Howe's side, that high press, that intensity, that fight for the ball, the want to be there first, it's not there. It's just not there. We've seen it very minimal this campaign, and that is a concern. And it goes back to what you were saying there. Does he stick with it? Does he believe in it? I think he will believe in it, but something's not right. Something's not right between the game plan and the execution of him.
I do think in recent weeks they have missed Bruno and Joe Linton. I think, we can't use that as an overall excuse because, they have been in the side for large parts of the season. But I do think one thing I noticed last night was, and at Liverpool to an extent, it's the complete lack of control in midfield. And Sandro Tonali isn't doing it at the moment. I actually thought Jacob Ramsey did all right last night. I thought he was quite neat and tidy on the ball, but again, doesn't give you that control that Bruno does in midfield. We know what Joe Linton does. He is the presser. He does to set the tone. Joe Willock can't really do that. Not in the same sort of manner as Joe Linton. So I think they are missing those two. But again, we can't use that as an excuse for several poor performances throughout the season, because those two have been in the side at those times. It does worry me that midfield three, when they have been together, haven't hit those heights. And the fact that the backup options, look, I think Lewis Miley would have started last night if he was fit and available. And I think he would have given a measure of control of midfield. Certainly that the others couldn't. But the game, Eddie kind of, his foundations are being able to control and not allow the game to become a basketball match, where it's just end-to-end constantly. And there were spells last night when it felt that way and nobody had control. And the intensity is a real worry, and it has been for a large part of the season. Now, we can put it down to tiredness, fatigue, and all that sort of stuff. But then every now and then they'll pull out performance. And it's been kind of rare in recent weeks where they will go and press and there will be high energy. And I think the lack of pressing, the lack of intensity, the lack of energy in industry is a massive, massive concern, because they are the pillars that a successful Eddie Howe's Newcastle United side is built upon. And at the moment, they are absolutely just, conspicuous by their absence, really.
And he mentions it's individual mistakes and errors. He said, I didn't feel a goal was coming. I didn't like the way the goals happened, and I didn't like the final actions. And again, you could remove the reference to Man City, you could remove the scoreline, and you could apply that to several other games this season. And that is the concerning thing, that it isn't just about Wednesday night. It isn't just about Liverpool. It's about other games in the campaign. And so far, Eddie Howe hasn't been able to find the remedy to that. And it just, there's an uneasy feeling, because I'm still backing him. You're still backing him. The majority of our listeners and viewers will still be backing him. But right now, something isn't clicking between what happens before the players run out on the pitch and what happens on it. And this result obviously comes ahead of a big, big month. Brentford on Saturday, and then you've got the FA Cup, Champions League, all that. I mean, in a month's time, Newcastle United could be out of the European picture in terms of in the league. You expect them to get through the playoffs, but we need, as we've said before, a big response from Newcastle. And I'm not going to overreact to Wednesday's result, because it was largely expectant what happened. But it's going to be about the response over the next few weeks, a month, and then maybe difficult questions may be asked by some. The chances, Mark, that Newcastle had that we spoke about, you had a Willock opportunity, really nice bit of play, and that was Newcastle that we like to see, that flowing move. Willock should do better. He just needs to take a shot, tries to take it around Trafford, he smothers it, and Gordon as well has a chance, which Trafford makes himself big in saves. And that all comes down to confidence, doesn't it? And I mentioned at the start, did the players truly believe they could do this? Based on those two moments, you would say not, because it's all about belief. And if you're full of confidence, and I think you put those two efforts in the back of the net.
Yeah, I think my issue there is, I think even if they do score, I think City just up their levels and probably go and blow Newcastle away. Now, I mean, Willock's, he's just tried to be a bit too cute, hasn't he? He's just tried to take it around Trafford, and I think you just get the shot away. He's come off his line. There's an opportunity to get the shot away before Trafford even reacts. And yeah, maybe lack of confidence, a lack of familiarity with that position, because he hasn't really got into those positions, barring the goal against PSG. Gordon, again, I think if that's on his right, he at least gets a proper shot away. But the fact it's on his left, which isn't his strongest foot, he just panics a little bit. I did take some heart from the fact that Newcastle did carve open City at times, which we haven't really done for large parts of the season. I mentioned that on Monday, didn't I, about teams find it easy to score against Newcastle. Newcastle don't find it easy to score against opposition. And I think that was the same last night. I think this is an ongoing issue. Defensively was a muddle. It was mistakes. It was a poor lack of judgment in key situations. And on the attacking front, it was a lack of clarity and a lack of confidence. I think you're probably right in that sense. Could it have been a different game if one of those goals were scored? Probably a little bit, but I still just think City would have. They were nowhere near the best last night. I think they would have upped their levels and just blown Newcastle away if there was any indication Newcastle were getting back into the tie.
Yeah, and they did pull one back, Newcastle, through Anthony Elanga. Beautiful goal, really nice goal. That's probably the Anthony Elanga that Newcastle United hoped they've bought. And then moments later, he missed another effort, and that is probably the Anthony Elanga that they have unfortunately bought. But let's be optimistic, Mark. Could that be the turning point for Anthony Elanga, that goal?
Well, look, if we are looking for a positive from last night, it probably was the Elanga goal. I mean, it's the first time I can sort of remember him actually driving at defenders and looking to commit them in the area. And it's a lovely finish. It's a great finish on, what is his weaker foot, with him being, sort of predominantly right-footed. The fact he had the confidence to go between two defenders and then still take another man on the box shows something we haven't really seen from him. We can't really look past the missed opportunity moments later, because as that ball's come in, I've thought, wow, if this does go in, this really could, rocket his Newcastle United career and send him into the player we thought we were getting. I still think he will come good, I've got to be honest. I think there is a player in there. I just think he's got to get to build on what he did last night with the goal. Again, credit the supporters for standing by him after the miss as well, because there was support from him again. He has to build on it, simple as that. I think he is a good player. He will become a good player for Newcastle United. He just needs to start proving it now.
Yeah, and obviously we just spoke about Gordon, who went off with a hamstring injury, and how described it as a big worry, and that will be a concern as much as he's been out of form. Newcastle United can't really afford to lose any more bodies at such a pivotal time in the campaign, so we'll wait to see what happens with that one. I think on Elanga, that's the kind of opposition where he should excel, where Newcastle United have to dig in deep, have to absorb and then break. You look at Saturday, Brentford are most likely going to sit back and do that to Newcastle, and that's not Elanga's game. It's not Newcastle's game, so I don't think we'll see any repetition of that goal. Let's talk about David Hopkinson then on TalkSPORT yesterday. Plenty said. The first thing I want to ask you is about the timing. An interesting time to do it in the mind of some before a really big game, and of course the end of the January transfer window. I mean, I spoke with Sam earlier in the week, and I said I didn't really want anyone to come out and explain what happened. I don't think it was necessary. Then obviously a day later, out comes the CEO. Did you think it was something that needed doing, and did you think it was the right time to do it?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever a bad thing when someone at the top end of the club comes and speaks out and gives a bit of communication, because I think the scars of the past of the previous owner are still being worn by some fans, where communication from the club wasn't even an annual thing. It was just non-existent. So it should be seen as a positive. The timing, I guess it was in response to what I would say was kind of deserved criticism for the lack of action in the January transfer window. The fact that it feels like a lot of big things at the club are kind of on pause at the moment. I'm sure they're not. I'm sure there is stuff going on behind the scenes with the training ground, the stadium decision, trying to improve the squad. And it does feel as if it's a bit, well, you would say it's reactive, but at the same time, I'm not sure things like that can be set up as quickly. So it is a positive that he's come out and said it. We can question a few things that were said. I'm fairly certain you're about to ask me about those. But it was good to hear him speak. The timing, yes, it is. It felt pointed, given the level of criticism that's being aimed at the club on all levels. Yeah,
let's go through a few things that he said. He first spoke about the window and said, "Let me tell you, this was an extraordinary transfer window in terms of activity. We have an amazing sporting director in Ross Wilson. He's been my first call in the morning and last call at night every day this month. The activity has been incredibly high. We didn't find the right opportunity for an acquisition, but we had the room to do so. The number one thing I talked to the ownership about is ambition. That's the magic word here."
Yeah, I mean, look, the one thing I'll say about this whole interview, and obviously, I know you're going to come on to the comments about where they'll be in 5 years' time and such like, or 4 years' time. And I say this a lot in football. It's actions, not words. Words mean nothing really. Which is probably a bit weird, a journalist saying that, isn't it? But it's true. It's down to actions by people who run a club and are at the top end of the club and can guide the club. There needs to be kind of proof in sight of where they want the club to go. Now, what we can say, and I know people don't like this being said, but since PIF have come in, Newcastle are a very different club to the one they inherited. For a start, they are trophy winners. They are competing in the Champions League. They are competing for European competition year in, year out. But from day one, we've always been told they want to be number one. And not just in Britain or in England. They want to be number one in the world. So I think the time is coming now for them to show that with, actions, not words. Can they go out? And I know they've been kind of hamstrung a little bit by, financial regulations and such like. But can they go out now? Now they've banked a lot of money for an Isak, which has, as we've been told, has improved the PSR situation beyond, beyond recognition. Can they now go out and prove on the field that they want to bring in the best? Can they go out and pull out another deal like a Tonali? Because that was the one deal where you've kind of gone, wow, I can't believe they've gone and got him. Because the rest of them you could kind of see coming to Newcastle to an extent, maybe Trippier because of where they were at the time. But can they go out and pull out deals like that and really challenge the best in Europe? Are they in a position to do that? Or what are they going to do to get themselves in a position to do that on a regular basis off the field? Again, I'm sure there is progress being made with decisions on the training ground and on St. James's Park or a new stadium. But I think those decisions you would hope would come in the near future, just as tangible proof. Yes, we are going to do this. We keep being told PIF are 100% behind the club. They believe in it and they're going to keep doing, showing interest and showing investment. And I'm sure they will. But I think it is right that we question some stuff. Why are things taking so long? Why does it feel as if there is so many links in the chain when it comes to making big decisions? And I know it's once-in-a-lifetime stuff is what they're calling it, isn't it? With the stadium, for example, it's once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So it is going to take time. But it feels as if, and even in sort of briefings that journalists have had, the amount of times it's been said, there should be something by the end of this month, or there should be something by the end of this season. Or it's becoming frustrating. So words are great, but I think actions are needed.
I think the defence you could offer is the fact that, planning takes a long time.
Oh, absolutely.
Regardless of whether it's an extension or a brand new training ground, you've got to find the site as well. That's not easy, both in terms of the training ground and a new stadium. Obviously, we know the restrictions around extending St. James's Park. So if they could do it tomorrow, I think they would do. But I do think there's a lot of red tape behind the scenes just to get to a proposed planning application, let alone spades in the ground.
I mean, I'm not having a go at the club there. 100%, you're absolutely bang on with the fact that you can't just go and build a £200 million training complex. You've got to find the right site. You've got to pay for that site. You've got to get the planning permission. You've got to get everything done. It's and the same with the stadium. There's no simple solution here. There's no kind of everyone's going to be happy with that decision, because there will be, if they could extend St. James's by 10, 15,000, I'm sure, as you say, they would do it. But it's going to be almost impossible because of where the stadium is. If they move, then you will get a lot of people questioning that decision purely because of the nostalgia and romance of St. James's. So I get why it is taking so long, but I'm not even just talking about those big decisions. I'm talking about the big sort of transfer decisions where it does feel as if there just are so many layers that have got to, or so many figures that have got to give the thumbs up before big decisions are made. And that there has to be a way, and I think it may happen now they have people like Hopkinson in place and Ross Wilson in place, where that decision-making process becomes a little bit more centralised and a little bit more streamlined. And I think a lot of the frustration and a lot of the questioning of the kind of hierarchy will be quietened a little bit if that can be done, if it is a case of that decision-making can be done on the ground, if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah, and I think that the changes at the top wouldn't have helped the process in terms of transfers and in terms of the stadium and the training ground. So hopefully with a bit of stability now and long-term vision, long-term appointments, Newcastle United can start going to the next level. He said we had money to spend in the window, but we didn't find the right player. So that's fine. I'm not too fussed about that. You said it in the last episode. You don't want to sign someone and 6 months down the line it's a big mistake. I guess what everyone really wants to be talking about, though, is the fact that he said by 2030, we will be consistently contending for top prizes in global football. We have a lot of wood to chop between here and there. And when I see Newcastle United, everywhere I look, I see opportunity. So that's the aim. 4 years' time, 2030, Newcastle United are challenging for everything possible. Great ambition. That's what we want to hear. I think he's a very ambitious person personally. His CV suggests that. We know PAIF as well, with all their trillions, if not more, very ambitious as well, and only really want to be on that golden ticket. So that all aligns. Fantastic. Like you say, it's words. We need to see actions. I think last night, Mark, was a reminder, though, of just how far away from that top level Newcastle United are, because essentially what they want to be is Manchester City. What they are not right now is Manchester City.
I think the last 5 or 6 days have been a reminder of where Newcastle are at, because they've gone to a Liverpool side that haven't really performed this season and were beaten quite comfortably in the end. They've gone to Manchester City and been beaten quite comfortably by what wasn't even a full-strength City side. But then I looked at, you think of those two clubs and the investment they have had in recent seasons, the money they've spent in the last sort of 15 years. Now, I'm not going to pretend Newcastle haven't spent money. They absolutely have spent a lot of money since PIF came in, but they are still playing catch-up. You know, City have been under Dubai ownership for, 15 years now? So, it'll be longer. It'll be 16, 17 years almost. So, they are playing catch-up, which means they will naturally have to spend more money. And because the club was left in the state it was in, they really are playing catch-up. So there is a degree of that. But they have got themselves in a strong position now. They have got the foundations in place, especially with people like Hopkinson and Wilson coming on board. It's just, I think the thing with Newcastle, where they're at, it's always going to be about what's next. What's next? So the Carabao Cup, they win that. Right, what's next? They get in the Champions League, what's next? They finish top 4, what's next? It's always going to be about what it takes to get that next level. Now, the way the Premier League is now, you look at the money Arsenal have spent, the money Liverpool have spent, the money Manchester City have spent, Manchester United have spent, Tottenham have spent, Chelsea. These are all clubs that will be able to match Newcastle because of these limitations or surpass Newcastle in terms of investment. So Newcastle have got to find a bit of a different way. And I think they've already had success in that way, which is realistically, they're not going to compete to get a player from Real Madrid or Barcelona. But then you maybe look at that next level of clubs. Can they be, and Manchester City kind of led the way a little bit with this, by the way, where they went and got players like Rodri from Atletico Madrid. They went and got Haaland from Dortmund. You know, with all due respect to those clubs, which are unbelievable football clubs, they aren't what you would class as a Real Madrid or Barcelona. So Newcastle's market in terms of incomings on the pitch, I think will have to be, can we go and get the next big thing from a kind of what I hate calling, but like a second tier club, you know? So can they go and get someone who is thriving in the French league, or even, you know, maybe not at Bayern Munich, but at one of the kind of next level in Germany? That's the challenge that they're facing. But the problem is, every other club in Europe, we think they're doing the same thing. So again, it comes down to what's next with Newcastle, and they've got to, I'm sorry, I keep repeating myself, but they've got to back up words with actions. And it's great hearing we want to be competing for major honours within 4 or 5 years. Every supporter in the world wants to hear that from their club. but we've got to really, really believe it.
And that starts with the summer transfer window, which is going to be the first real big test of Ross Wilson and David Hopkinson. But let us know in the comments your thoughts on David Hopkinson's words. Like Mark says, always good to hear that ambition does fill you with a little bit of warmth that there is big things to come, and hopefully words are acted upon, and the actions that we see do indeed turn Newcastle United into the very best team possible. Thanks to Mark for popping onto the podcast. I will see you guys very soon. Enjoy the rest of the week. Do check out the match preview ahead of Brentford later today or tomorrow, whenever it might appear. But do switch on, tune in, leave us a comment, leave us a review, and we will catch you guys very soon.